Okay, so video 50, I want to demonstrate today a little bit about what you can do with disks that might not be automatically detected by Xways Forensics. 99% of the time, if you add a disk to Xways, it will find all the appropriate partitions and what have you, even if it has to resort to skipping to different parts of the disks to do it. In this example though, I want to show how we can use GPT partition tables to potentially reconstruct partitions that might not be accessible by default. So what I've done, I've created a virtual hard drive, just a small one. I've copied some data to it, and then I've messed around with the first sector, and then I've added that virtual hard drive to Xways Forensics, which is what we currently see. So you see at the top there, it's just got unpartitioned space, 500 meg. The first sector here is scrambled. You would expect to see, the usual kind of MBR type content up here, 55AA down the bottom there, and that's all been taken away. But what there still is here is your traditional kind of GPT partition headings there, followed by the partition table entries. And with GPT you can have, I think it's 128 partitions. In this case there's just the kind of usual Microsoft reserved, and then there's a basic data partition here, which is actually the 500 meg partition where my data is, but as you can see at the moment it's not seeing it. So there's a few ways we can go about accessing this. The first thing to do is to check that your data interpreter is set in a way that will enable you to see the bits we need to see. So I'm going to tick 64-bit signed, GUID down there, and you can choose some other bits and bobs, but that should be all we'll need for this. And then ensure that it's actually showing. Oops, just hidden it there. So it's down the bottom there, so we'll drag that over. Okay, so GPT partition table entries always start with the unique GUID type. There's a list of these. Each manufacturer, or each partition that's made by certain companies or software, will have a unique GUID at the top, which will be 16 bytes, and Microsoft data partitions like this one will always be that. And you'll notice that if I put the cursor there, the data interpreter will automatically take that 16 byte entry and do all the appropriate bits with it to format it correctly. So you'll see there's a 4 byte swap that starts at EB, D0, A0, A2, so on and so forth. But what's more important is the 64-bit value here. If we go to the third line down, these are the start and end LBA sectors. So those 8 bytes there are the 64-bit start, and those are the 64-bit 8-byte value for the end LBA. So we know that the starting LBA for this partition is 65664, and the end is 10200031. So that's how to do it kind of manually. But fortunately with Xways there is, if you position the cursor right at the top of the first sector, first offset, and use the template manager, there's a GUID partition table template manager there, which if you launch, it will traverse all that information for you in a more user-friendly way. So here's my starting LBA and my ending LBA, the one I just showed you in the hex view, and that's the basic data partition. So if I copy that, you can right click copy as well if you want. Close that down and go to sector. If I single click down here where it says sector and paste in there my value, it takes me to what many of you will recognise as the start of an NTFS partition. All I have to do now is go tools, disk tools, interpret as partition start, and what that does is it tells Xways to treat the offset where you've just clicked as a partition start, and if there's a valid partition there, it will traverse it and add it to your case or whatever. So if I do that now, it will say one more partition's found, and then it lists it straight away up there. Now, when I was making this video over the weekend, or planning it rather, I actually had a virtual hard drive with a couple of partitions in, and I discovered a little bit of a bug which I told Stefan about, and Stefan, in his usual efficient way, is going to correct it for all future versions of X-Ways. And he also said that future versions of X-Ways, if the sector 0 is scrambled but there's still a valid GPT structure there, it will automatically add the partitions. So this video essentially might be out of date probably in the next few days, because I'm currently using X18.6 SR6. But anyone who hasn't got the latest version or hasn't got a license for the latest version, this might help you and benefit you when you get disks that are sometimes a little bit troublesome. Anyway, back to the point. If I now double click this partition, you'll now see it can map it. And here are all my pictures that I put on there. If I go to the gallery view, and I'll just change the type to pictures for now, because that's the only thing that's of interest. You'll see I've got the various Mr. Robot type things. And so now there's a partition there that's fully readable and fully traversable that wasn't by default. And the first sector that's reported is added in there. So I think that's probably about it. It's a very useful thing to do, and I've had the odd occasion, not many, but I've had the odd occasion with real seizures where the first sector 0 actually looked okay, but for whatever reason it still wasn't displaying the partitions, and using that exact same technique by going to the third sector, or sector 2 depending on what your terminology is. I've seen this information in here, I've noted the start and end offsets, I've gone to them, I've added them as a partition, and successfully managed to resurrect data. So it's a good thing to have.